Hello guys, Lit here. So this is Reliquarian Strength stacking Flicker Strike, and the Flicker Strike part is optional. You can use any skill that you want because the bare bone of this build is Strength Stacker. Now for the Flicker Strike, I just want to try it out, and it looks pretty interesting to play with, so I just tried it out, and it does feels pretty fun. It's a lot of action, very flashy. But I think this skill is more of a skill that either you love or you hate. This does looks cool, but I also can see that this skill can be very disorienting for some people. So if you don't want to use Flicker Strike, you don't have to. And for the Reliquarians, this is mainly because I'm using Flicker Strike. There is a Terminal Ash node, which gives an easy way to generate frenzy charges, which is really important for Flicker Strike. But if you're not using Flicker Strike, I think Ascendant is probably better. You get more attributes, and there's a lot more damage node on Ascendants. And I think Ascendance is just better in this regard. But for this one, I'm using Flicker Strike, so I'm using Reliquary. And the Terminus S means that we don't have to use Terminus S itself on the weapon, so we have a free weapon slot. And in this case, I'm using Paradoxica. And Paradoxica is really strong because attack with this weapon deal double damage, so you basically already deal double damage with just Paradoxica alone. And the variant of Paradoxica that I'm using is the one that have attack with this weapon penetrate 16 chaos resistance, because this build deal only chaos damage. And I also get the attack speed because more attack speed feels a lot better for the Precursor Strike. Now the downside of Paradoxica is it doesn't have a lot of flat damage. So we need to find another source that can give us a lot of flat damage, and we got that from Replica Alberon. And Replica Alberon is a very good item for strength stacking because it is give 1 to 80 chaos damage to attack per 80 strengths, which we have quite a lot of strength. And it also gives you a percentage increased strength, which is really strong for strength stacking. But the downside of the Replica Alberon is you cannot deal non-chaos damage, which most of the time doesn't really matter because we only deal chaos damage anyway. But there's a few things that you cannot do because of it. For example, like Aura's End, you cannot use that because the Aura's End deal elemental damage. And something like Herald of Frost, Herald of Ice is also not going to work. Although you can still use the explosion that with physical damage because we do have Unholy Might, and that will convert the physical damage into chaos damage. But it does limit your option for explosions, which is really good for clear or mapping. And another thing that related to the Strength Stacker is the combination of Crown of Ice and Iron Will. So Iron Will make your strength damage bonus apply to spell damage as well. So 5 strength in PoE 1 will give 1% melee physical damage, and that's going to apply to spell. And with Crown of Ice, the increase of reductions to spell damage also apply to attack by 150% value. And because we have a lot of strength, we end up having a lot of increased damage. And the rest of the item is just basically a lot of strength and increased attribute, for example like the Eyes of the Great Wolf. This is like a budget options. Ideally we want Simplex, but Simplex is a lot more expensive. This one is a lot cheaper. So either Great Wolf with increased attribute and attack and cast speed. Crit multi is better, but crit multi is also a lot more expensive, and I don't want to spend too much currency on the amulet because at the end of the day you're going to switch to Simplex anyway. So there's no point on spending too much currency on the amulet. And for the ring, I'm using Helical Ring with Strength Attribute, Crit Multi, and All Elemental Resistance. And with the new catalyst that scale all the suffixes, and this basically increase all the mod that we care about. Strength, Crit Multi, Attribute, and All Elemental Resistance. And for the armor, we have the 60% increase attribute on the armor. We also have 1% less damage taken per 110 strength. So we have around like 2.1k. Which is pretty low for strength stacking, but that basically gives us 10% less damage taken. And for the glove, we just want strength and also damage increase per 100% strength. This is also going to give us a lot of increased damage. And also another implicit that are really important for the Flicker Strike is the non-fall strike skill target to additional nearby enemy. This is an explicit mod, so you have to use Hour of Conflict for this one. A lower tier is only 1 additional nearby enemy, and 1 additional is fine, but 2 additional, it just makes the clear feels a lot better. And for the shield, I just decided to go for Svalinn, because Svalinn is really broken for defense, because Svalinn going to make your chance to block become lucky. So lucky in pathofexile, meaning it's going to roll twice and it's going to pick the best result. So right now with the Svalinn and chance to block is lucky, we are at 89% chance to block attack and 82% chance to block spell. So we need a little bit more for the spell block, but so far 89% chance to block and 82% chance to block spell feels really good right now. It feels quite tanky already. So for the passive tree, this is what the passive tree looks like right now. This is a passive tree that utilizes spirit personality because we are strength stacking. So we have this like snaking pathing over here, because the further the personality from the starting point, the more strength you get. So for the split personality, we have increased strength and increased massive of life. The same with this one. It gives us a decent amount of strength, decent amount of life. And for the ascendancy, I'm using various ambitions. This one going to give you 23% chaos resistance, which we need. Right now we are sitting at 59%, which is good enough for mapping. And Terminus Ash, because I'm playing Precursor. And for the last two ascendancy point, I'm using all ascendancy. Now for all, this is the first time I'm using Precursor release, and the one that I won from Precursor release is action speed cannot be modified below base value if you have no gems on your boots. And we do not have any gem on the boots, and we also don't have any gem for the glove. So we have the action speed cannot be modified, and we also have the take no extra damage from critical strike. Now the take no extra damage from critical strike, I don't think is that big of a deal, because we do have quite a high block chance. But the action speed feels really, really nice for mapping, especially for the ground effect from Delhi. They're going to slow you down, and also something like Drowning Orb is really, really annoying. I die quite a lot because of that before I'm using Precursor release. And this node feels really, really good in terms of like quality of life, because it technically doesn't really give you defense or offense, but allowing you to just bypass that slow from the Delhi and Drowning Orbs, it just feels really, really good for mapping. And we're also using Little Pride here, of course, because Little Pride gives you a lot of strength, and we are strength stacking. We are at 2.1, which is pretty low for strength stacking, but this is like an early setup. I don't have the cluster for the strength stacking, because that one is going to be quite expensive to craft. But for now, I use a Little Pride here, and it also have a node that gives you increased percentage strength. So like this one, and also this one and this one. There's a variety of variation you can use. You don't have to use this number specifically, but this is what I'm using right now. And because we are using Svalinn, I also take some block node over here, some block node over here, and also some block node over here, which if you're not using Svalinn, for example, like if you use a two-handed for some other skill, like Heavy Strike, Molten Strike of Zenith or something like that, then all of this point we can allocate in someone else's. The same goes for that his cluster over here. This melee strike splash damage, and also this node give you a more range attack speed, and this one give you attack speed per enemy in close range. This is not that good for a flicker strike, but not necessary for any other skill. The cluster right now we are using something like Marcher Mastery, Marcher Prowess. This gives us attack speed accuracy. This one gives us more attack speed, but I think this one is not really that good. I will prefer to have a cluster like this one. This one have a prodigious defense, which gives you a lot of block, which is really, really good for this build. And also Devastator gives you 50% chance to explode. This is really good for mapping. And later on the end game, we will switch this with a strength stacking cluster, which gives you a lot of strength, all attribute with increased effect, and that's going to give you like a lot of strength. Then we can ramp up the strength number from there. But for now, this is more like the entry budget, and I know some people are going to say that this is probably not going to be cheap, but for attribute stacker, this is always going to be the case. It's not cheap to get into, but it's kind of build able to scale really, really high depending on like how many currency you want to put into the build. And I also forget to explain this one. This is a medium cluster for critical. And here we can get the overwhelming malice. You can also get them from large cluster jewel. I think it's the chaos damage one that also have the overwhelming malice. But I choose to go for the medium cluster because I also need the critical strike chance. And having the Unholy Might is just a little bit extra DPS, but the most important part, you'll have a chance to apply Wither on hit. And because this build have a lot of attack speed, we can stack the Wither pretty high. And for the Ahura, I'm using Purity of Element, and some of you probably going to be like, if we have Purity of Element here, why not using from this one? It have less reservation, but I need the Precursor release because I just had enough with the Drowning Orb and the daily ground effect. So I'm still using Purity of Element. It's not really for the elemental element because we do have the immune to shock from Tempest Shield, and Ignite generally not that bad when you have like a big HP pool. I mean 6,000 is not that high. With strength stacking you can go 10k plus. So Ignite is not really a big of a problem, and the action speed basically give you a freeze immunity. And we can also reduce like the chill effect by using this or something else. So we don't really need the elemental element, but we do need the elemental resistance because this build, I'm not even capped my resistance without Flasks. So with Flasks, we are capped, but I need this Flask to cap. So we are pretty starved on elemental resistance, and we can fix that later on with the large cluster that I'm talking about earlier with strength, attribute, and elemental resistance. That will help us cap the elemental resistance, but for now I'm still relying on Flasks, which on mapping is not that big of a deal, but when you go into like bossing, this is probably not a very good setup for it. For bossing, you probably want to use something like Mage Plot, and with Mage Plot, you definitely can cap your resistance. It's not that hard with Mage Plot. So depending on your content, the belt will be either Mage Plot or Headhunter. And some of you probably also going to ask why not using Shrine Belt. Number one is very, very expensive. So, and there is a one variant that I think is really good for this one, which is a crit shrine. And that basically allow you to don't have to like skill or the critical, and you can use the point to something else's. But the shrine belt is pretty expensive. And for mapping, I think Headhunter is just the better belt. And for bossing, it's a different story. We can argue between like the Shrine Belt and Mage Plot, but for mapping, Headhunter is just a lot better. It's not just give you DPS, but it's also make you very, very tanky. And with the Headhunter buff in combination with Svalinn, this feels very, very solid in terms of defense. Like I'm level 99 right now, in my way on 100, so hopefully I get 100 soon and try to farm some currency to craft all the endgame stuff. So I think that's it for me. This is the build that I'm playing right now, and I will try to push the build further, try to stack more and more strength. I think we can stack like up to 4,000 maybe. I haven't done like the end game calculation on PvP yet, but there's a lot of people already playing this archetype, so if I get stuck, I can kind of look around and see what other people did. And if you guys curious about like the strength stacking archetype, two person that I can recommend is Connor Converse and also Captain Lance. Two of them do a lot of attribute stacking, and they have a lot of tag there. So I think that's it for me. As usual, if you guys have any questions, just leave it in the comment below. I will try my best to answer it. And thank you everyone for watching. I really, really appreciate it. And I will see you on the next one.